What's in this suitcase is not the most expensive thing I own. But by the time I'm done with it, it will be. Now some of you might be wondering what this even is. Is it a bird? Is it a plane? Well, it's better than both of those things, and it's better than Superman. This is a custom mechanical keyboard. And if you were wondering that, then now you're probably thinking, well, how is this a keyboard and where are the keys and how do you press down on them? And that's the fun part. Unlike most normal keyboards, this doesn't come pre-built with switches and keycaps. We have to build that ourselves. So let's get started. To start, we're gonna have to turn this keyboard around, so let's view this from the back side. And you'll notice that the front of it had this nice desert sand color. That's what the color scheme of this keyboard is called. But the back of it has this beautiful aluminum red. On the back, we have this MagSafe charger part right here, which I won't use because I don't have a MagSafe charger, but that does mean that this is the only part of the keyboard I have not peeled the plastic off of yet. I got to save this for the video. So let's do that together. Now to get into the board, we're going to have to remove the 4 screws on the sides right here, and the 4 screws that are on the top and the bottom right here. And this keyboard actually does come with a screwdriver set and a bunch of other accessories to help you open up the keyboard. But for now I'm going to use my electronic screwdriver set that I bought exclusively to build keyboards. This is the Keep Monkey electronic precision screwdriver set, and I believe the only screw bit that we're going to need is this one back here. Unfortunately, these screws don't appear to be magnetic, but they actually do have some really nice lettering on the back. I'm not sure if you can see that with the camera, but they appear to say by Angry Mal by No Wire Design or something like that. Unfortunately, I can't get my screwdriver to reach all the way down to these 2 screws down here, so I will have to use the manual screwdriver for this. It's actually a pretty nice screwdriver. It also has some lettering on it saying number 868T6x25mm. I don't believe that this bit is removable though, so you can really only use this screwdriver for this specific bit, which according to my electronic screwdriver set, this is a T6H bit. I'm not actually sure what that means, but I'm gonna hope that one of you do. Even with the included screwdriver, this is a bit of a pain to get the screws. You have to go in at quite an angle. Now I believe we can take this back plate off. And I'm honestly surprised there is not more to it than that. There are 2 batteries, one on each side of this, which the MagSafe charges. And there's not much else to say about these batteries. They appear to connect to these 2 battery connector things, I suppose. I don't know what else you would call them down here. And when I removed the 4 screws on the sides, the plate on the bottom also came off. So let's see if we can just remove this and put that off to the side. It would probably be a better idea now that I think about it to put the batteries facing up in case something does happen. The included manual suggests that we next have to disconnect these 2 tabs on the side and that the tabs somehow come up to give you access to them. So let's just try to pull them up, I suppose. That seems simple enough. And now these should just slide out. Excellent. It turns out that I read the manual wrong, and I'm actually not supposed to remove these 4 screwdrivers on the back and take this part off. We're supposed to remove the 4 screws on the side in here. So let's get those out. I believe we can just use the same screwdriver. These screws aren't the same as the previous screws. They're a bit shorter, and they also don't have the lettering on the back, but that's fine as we will never see them. And now that those are out, we can turn the keyboard around, and hopefully the front part won't fall off with it. By front part, I did mean the motherboard of the keyboard, or the processor, or whatever you want to call it. This part appears to be what was holding down the covers of the keyboard, this black part right here, and we now need to remove this. And we do so by using the lift tabs that should be on the side, like so. I am running out of space on screen, So I'll just have to stack them on top of each other. These covers actually appear to be magnetic. When I took them off, yes, there is this nice magnetic force holding them down as well. And now we remove some more screws, the 4 on each side, which do have the same lettering as the other screws, so they're a little bit inconsistent about whether or not the lettering is seen or not, based off if the screws are visible. These screws are actually a bit shorter than the other one, so it's not a matter of supply chains and stuff like that, where it's cheaper to just make them all have the letters, because these are not going to be seen, but they're also shorter, so we can't use them interchangeably. Now that that's done, I believe we should just be able to lift these halves up individually. And once again, I am out of room to place them anywhere. So let's just move this entire frame off the desk, because that will no longer be necessary. We are now left with just these two halves, and these two halves each also have their own 4 screws holding them in place. And I believe with that we can just take this cover off. I will just leave this screw in here so we do not lose it. Now that we have the two halves separated, we can move on to trying to install the stabilizers. And in order to do so, we're going to have to remove the plate from the PCB. So let's get this PCB carefully lifted off of the case. Let's get this out of the way for now. We're going to get back to this later. And at the moment the plate is screwed onto the PCB by these 4 screws down here, we actually need a different screwdriver to get at these, and the included screwdriver states that is a T4CRV, whatever that means. Fortunately, my screwdriver kit does come with an electronic version of this, so let's just get these screws out. And that comes off really nice and easily. Let's just leave that in there and hope I don't lose those screws. We can take off the included foam now as well. And the second layer of foam that is mandatory these days on all keyboards. For the stabilizers, I've opted to go with the Owlstabs Owlstabs V2s. I chose black because we're not going to have to see the stabilizers anyways, and it doesn't really matter what color they are. And I chose these stabilizers for a very specific reason, and I will get into why later. Now, if you're wondering what a stabilizer is, it is what keeps your longer keys stable. Those would be your shift, spacebar, enter, backspace, etc. Backspace in some cases. And if you're wondering why you need them, allow me to demonstrate. This is just a normal keycap that I'm going to use to demonstrate. It's not going to be the one in the final build, and I'll explain why in a moment. So if we were to put this keycap on this switch and put the switch on the keyboard, obviously, without any stabilizers, you'll notice that we're able to rock this back and forth quite a lot. If we look at it from the top down, you'll see that's quite a bit of rocking. That makes for a very unpleasant and uneven typing experience, which is not desirable when you're paying this much for a keyboard. So the stabilizers that I'm opting to use today are the Owlstabs screw-in stabilizers. I know that these are not the best stabilizers, and they don't have the best reputation, but there's a very specific reason that I'm going to be using these, and I will explain why in a moment after I put on my keycaps, which will be quite a while for me in real life and not that long for you. I'm also going to briefly explain how they work because I personally find it to be quite interesting. The stabilizers comes in 3 parts. You have your metal wire, which is not a very thin wire. You have the part that the wire pushes up or down on, and you have the part that the part that houses both of these and keeps them all together. What happens when you press down on a stabilizer is the wire is connected to this part right here, and in a default state, it is up. When you press down, it pushes down like this. And because of the way that the stabilizer is set up, when this part goes down, it also pushes down this side as well, if it is stable, if it is set up properly. I'm not sure if you can see that properly, but that is what this is for, is to keep everything in the right place. Notice how when I push up on this, that part goes up, and when I push down, it goes down. So that happens on both sides at the same time, and that keeps everything nice and even, which I think is really cool. You might have also noticed that I've already applied these band-aids, or band-aid-like things, to the left and right of my shift and spacebar key. And that is because that was a pain to do. I do not feel like doing it again, and I lost the recording of me doing it the first time. The next step, and this is very important because it's going to be a pain to deal with later if you don't, is that before you start screwing in your stabilizers, you are going to want to stick your PCB foam on there if you want it in. Luckily for us, this PCB foam is actually very easy to align thanks to the screw holes, so we can just quickly plop that on in there. And I seem to have lost one of the screw holes somehow. Incredible. After taking an appropriate amount of time to panic and have a midlife crisis, you should search your carpet floor for the 2 tiny screws and standoffs that you need to complete your keyboard build. Once you have done so, you can make sure you screw it on tightly to make sure they never escape again. Now that that has been taken care of, we can move on to lubing our stabilizers. And if you're wondering if that's a safe thing to say on YouTube, absolutely it is. This is a normal thing to do. We are not weird. This is not a fetish. Please move on from the word lube. The specific kind of lube we're going to be using is Krytox 205 grade 0, mainly because that is just what everyone uses. As for why we're lubing our stabilizer, it's because the stabilizer obviously makes contact with the wire and the thing that holds everything together, which is not a very smooth experience out of the box. An improperly lubed stabilizer can cause your stabilizers to rattle and to just make other unpleasant noises or feelings, such as wanting to throw your keyboard at the wall. I would like to not throw this keyboard at the wall because it is both very heavy and expensive. So let's lube our stabilizers. To do so, we're essentially just going to put some lube everywhere that contact would be made. So let's start with the inside of this thing that holds things together. We want just enough that it is going to make things smooth, but not enough where it is overlubed and things feel mushy. It's going to be hard to tell what that amount is when you're first starting out, and unfortunately for me, I am just starting out. So this is going to take quite a lot of trial and error, which I will do off screen, but enjoy cringing as you watch me douse this thing in Krytox 205 grade 0, I suppose. And then as for the wire, we are going to want to apply a generous amount of lube, both on the wire itself that goes in the stabilizer and a bit off of the side, because the side is going to clip into a specific part and we also want that part to be lubed as well. This feels like it should be enough. I really should just stop. Now, because the wire is going to be inserted into this part of the stabilizer right here, I also want to apply some lube inside of there. I suppose it can't hurt at the very least. Well, it can, but at least I'm going to be the one that's hurting it. Now, to assemble the stabilizer, we're going to find the part of the housing that has a hole in the front. We're going to make that line up with the stabilizer such that the slant is going down this way. The hole is up here, the slant is down this way, and that goes up in there. And then the wire goes into the hole like so, and we want to clip it into the stabilizer so you hear a click. And that should feel smooth when you bring this up and down. And we want to do this with the other side as well. So we're going to need to lube another part of the stabilizer and a housing for it. Now, of course, that was a joke. I can, in fact, lube stabilizers. I am not completely new to building keyboards. And I have done so already for both the left and the right side. You'll notice that the right side has already been put together and that the left side has not yet, because I have one last thing I want to mention. Because my first time installing stabilizers on a keyboard, I screwed the screws in from the top, when in fact you're supposed to screw them in from the bottom. Make sure you don't mess that up. Also, Make sure you hook in the stabilizers at the bottom correctly, otherwise they will be very loose and that will not be very good. With our stabilizers installed, we can now put our foam back on. Again, that's just going to line up perfectly with the screw holes, which should still all be there. And they are, thank goodness. Some of the foam is probably going to be popping up thanks to the stabilizers being in the way. Don't worry too much about that. That is absolutely fine. We don't care that much. As long as the plate goes back on top, it is perfectly fine. Put the plate back on and screw the plate back together. Now that we are back to what we had before, except for having the stabilizers installed, we can finally install our switches. And for this build, I am going with Azure Dragons. These are a delightfully colorful switch. They are tactile and I quite like them. I believe they come pre-lubed. It's not very good lube, but it's still better than no lube, which is great because I do not want to lube all day. When installing the switches, you want to make sure that you are putting them in the correct orientation. A lot of switches, or a lot of keyboards in general, will have their switches be top-facing LED, which is this white part down here on the PCB. This is the LED, and a lot of them will have them on top because most keycaps, most consumer regular keycaps have the shine through on top. But on higher-end keyboards, you will often find south-facing LED keyboards. So make sure that you have them aligned properly. If it is south-facing, you want these metal pins on the back of the switch to be on top, and click them into place one by one. And you also want to make sure that you are supporting the back of the PCB as you are inserting your switch. If any of these pop out, you're going to have to resolder it, and that is quite a pain. Now, I'm not sure what kind of plate this is, but to be completely honest, I kind of hate it. It's very flexible, don't get me wrong, but it's also very flexible, which is causing these switches to not be inserted properly all the way. You'll notice that there is quite a gap here if you look, and that I'm not sure if you can see it because it might be too dark, but this plate is not fully housing these switches, which is very annoying. So I'm gonna have to go in and lift it up from the bottom or something like that in order to get these properly housed. And that's one of the reasons why I do think you should install your switches at this time also. Not just when it comes to this keyboard, but when it comes to building keyboards in general, you should want to make sure that your switches are housed properly in their plate. Luckily, 2 boxes of those were enough to fill out the entire keyboard. And in theory, we could put the keyboard back together right now, but that will kind of defeat the point of buying this. The name of the keyboard was the Adjustable Flux Alice, and I've already explained the Alice part, and I'll explain more in detail later. But I haven't talked about the rest of it. Let's talk about the flex. Typically speaking, when you're pressing down on a keyboard in a regular mechanical membrane keyboard, you have to bottom out and it stops right there and there is no sort of cushioning. It's a very hard bottom out. In higher end keyboards, we have something called flex. Notice how when I'm pressing down on this key, the rest of the keyboard also goes down with it. It has a bit of a cushioning effect where it's not as harsh of a bottom out, let's say. And with this particular keyboard, we can adjust how hard we want that bottom out to be. So if we were to remove this now, you'll notice that this keyboard has these things called leaf springs on the top and the bottom of these. And these control how much the keyboard can flex. As I'm pressing down on this, you'll notice that it goes down a bit, but it doesn't go down all the way. We can change that. If I were to take my screwdriver here and I were to unscrew this, you'll notice that there is also this stopper here at the bottom. If we take the stopper and we try to move it very carefully all the way to the right, and get that back in place and screw this back in, and now if I try to press down on it, you'll notice it does not go down at all. It does very slightly, but not that much. This will essentially get rid of the flex, and if we were to completely remove the stopper at all, it would make it so flexible that it would bottom out very quickly, which I do not personally like. Generally speaking, I like the way that it comes default when it's at that second stage, but I would like it to be a slightly more flexible, just not as flexible as without any stopper whatsoever. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace these stainless steel leaf springs, which are not all that flexible to begin with these phosphorus copper leaf springs, which it comes with. It comes with 2 extra stainless steel ones and 10 phosphorus coppers, in case you, for some reason, lose 2 of your leaf springs. To do that, I'm just gonna go ahead and unscrew this once again. I'm gonna set this stopper back to its initial position in the second spot. And I'm just gonna replace the old leaf spring with this phosphorus copper one. And hopefully, after replacing all 4 of them, I will see a slight difference in how springy the board is. I can definitely feel the difference after doing that. This goes down much easier, but it doesn't go down all the way completely right away like it did without any stopper in the middle at all. Now that all of that is replaced, we can check the flex of our keyboard now, and it is quite good. I actually like this quite a lot. It's a noticeable improvement to what it was before, but it's still not bouncing like a trampoline, which I do not like. And we can finally put the keyboard back together by just following these steps in reverse. So let's try to align things properly and put them in the right spot. I believe this one was on this side. That looks accurate enough, and therefore this one should be over here. And now we can bring back the skeleton of our keyboard and plop these back into place very carefully. Try not to damage anything. And screw this back into place as well. I believe that these were the screws that were shorter but did have the writing on them. Now I'm pretty sure that we were never actually supposed to take this piece off, so let's put this back on and screw that in as well. And then we can go about putting on the front decorations, basically. This is also a decoration, but still. Yes, turning this upside down does not make everything fall apart. That's a good thing. Now we can put these decorative plates back on. These are magnetic, so they should be able to just stay on there without needing me to prop them up. And this as well can go back on. I believe it was in this orientation. It turns out my orientation was wrong, and this is how it's supposed to screw together. Also, I think these screws might be magnetic. My screw bits were just not magnetized, so I take back all those complaints I had about it then, I suppose. I could have sworn that I magnetized these screw bits before I started working on this keyboard, but perhaps I was magnetizing the wrong ones or something. Now that that's all screwed back in place, there's really just a battery pack left, and we have to reconnect these connectors. So let's plop these back up and try to slide these into place properly. I'm not sure how one goes about doing that. I suppose we'd have to just carefully try to get everything to slot into place. I do not know if that works. It seems to fit, so hopefully that's how you're supposed to do it. Get this back part on. Put all that into place, and put in the final 4 screws. Are these magnetic? They are. Well then, I apologize to Angry Mal for all my times I've said the screws are not magnetic. And with that, the build is almost complete. We just need to put the keycaps on and test to make sure everything works. Now that we have the keyboard assembled, it is time for the final piece of the puzzle, and that is the keycaps. And for this, I've chosen Alumizu. These are not normal plastic keycaps. These come in an aluminum tin with lots of foam and are CNC'd aluminum keycaps based off the Mizu colorway. The black have gold-ish silver. It's kind of hard to tell, honestly. But the black ones have lighter color legends, and the normal alpha keycaps are blue with black. Unlike the rest of the build, putting in the keycaps are relatively simple. You just plop them in there. So I'm just going to stick this in and press down, and do this for the rest of the keys as well. Not the escape key. I'll show you why in a moment. Unfortunately, because I'm not a big, giant 1,000 sub keyboard YouTuber yet, I do not yet have Hippio magic, and I will have to do this hand by hand, or key by key, and you will not have to watch me do it, because I'm going to skip ahead right now. Now, there's a bit of a problem. I don't have enough keys to fill out the entire keyboard. As you see, we're still missing the B key. My spacebars do not fit. This is slightly too big. And my modifiers are also gone. Fortunately, this pin does have a second layer. Let's see what's underneath there. And that was not supposed to happen. The arrow keys are fortunately present. We will stick them on now, as well as my page up, page down, and end keys. Those are going to go on the left over here. I believe this one is Control or Alt or something like that. And this one is your Windows or Linux or whatever key you're using, depending on what operating system you're using. So we'll put Super right here. And that just leaves us with a tiny shift, enter, backspace, or space bars. Still missing a B key. Caps lock, and our shift key. Now we could use the shift keys and stuff in here that is provided with our Alumizu set. But when I was considering the fact that we're using an Alice keyboard, and I figured we have 2 space bars anyways, the 7U and 6U spacebars are obviously not going to fit, so we're going to need to use either our shift keys or our enter key or something like that that will fit. And so I've opted to get the novelties kit as well. This is the Alumizu novelties kit. It also comes in its own can. I will not be using these spacebars, unfortunately, because they are beautiful spacebars, but they will not fit. So instead we will use these tiny spacebars. This one is the left one. And on the second layer, we have the right one somewhere. Here it is. Let's try to get those both in place. These, I believe, are row 4. We'll use these for our secondary keys next to our spacebars. This one is function, and this one I believe is alt or control, depending on whatever you're doing. I'll use this for my left shift. For my right shift, or rather for my enter, we'll be using this one. This appears to be row 1, and it does indeed fit. I believe I'll be putting this shiny water kanji for my tilde. Is this row 2? I think this is row 2. I don't think I actually have a row 3 for my right shift. We're going to have to go back to using the normal right shift for that. Unfortunately, I forgot that the right shift actually, we don't have a novelty for that, so we'll just have to use the standard one. Now, as for the second B key, because this is an Alice keyboard, they have 2 B keys, one on the left and one on the right. I was just going to use some random novelty or some other random row 4 key to put in there, but a Reddit user by the name of jedininjaster gave me theirs for free. So big shout outs to jedininjaster for helping me complete this build and make it look actually like a normal Alice build. The novelties kit, when I first bought it, I didn't realize it didn't come with a second B key, and it didn't occur to me that I would need one, so thank you very much for that. Now, this keyboard also comes with 2 wrist rests. These are not your typical wrist rests. They are magnetic, and they are quite fun to play with as just fidget toys. but we'll be using them as a wrist rest for now, because that is their intended purpose. The idea being that they are able to rotate freely based off how your wrists are meant to contort, I suppose, based off this unusual keyboard layout. I find it to be relatively comfortable. It's just that sometimes when you put your hand down and it goes in the wrong place, the wrist rests do slip away from you, unlike a normal wrist rest where it will just stay in place. You do kind of have to get it right on the right spot. Now, you might be wondering, why would you possibly even buy an Alice keyboard? And that is for a lot of different reasons. Most of them are ergonomic. Even though an Alice keyboard is not truly an ergonomic keyboard, it's a lot better than what a normal keyboard is like. For example, on a normal keyboard, your hands are typically going to be something like this. And that is very uncomfortable. You'll notice that my wrists are in an awkward angle. Your hands, you want them to be straight. They're not really meant to bend like this all the time, especially when you're at your desk for hours on end. With an Alice keyboard, your wrists get to be more straight. You'll notice that my wrists are not bending in that odd direction at all. They're just perfectly straight with the rest of my hand. A truly ergonomic keyboard would be fully split, where your hands get to be just going straight ahead instead of having to go at an angle anyways, which still will bring your shoulders forward. But this is better than being like that. In addition, an Alice keyboard allows your keyboard to tilt slightly. You'll notice that if you look at it from the top, this is not a straight line going from this direction to this direction. This goes at an angle. And that allows your wrist to not be fully flat on the table, which is not great for your wrist. There are your carpal tunnel bones, I forgot what they're called exactly, but when your wrist is completely flat on your table, it squeezes down on the nerve, your carpal tunnel nerve or whatever, and that's where people talking about carpal tunnel, that's where that comes from. By allowing your wrist to be at a slight angle, which is what these wrist rests also allow your wrist to do, they just tilt down automatically due to the fact that they are floating, you are reducing your strain on that specific nerve, I suppose. And the other benefit, of course, being that your thumbs have two different buttons. At the moment, they're both set to spacebar, but you can program them to be other things. For example, if I want this to be enter, so I don't have to reach out with my pinky all the time to hit enter, or some other obscure key, I could have space on my left thumb and some other key on my right thumb. And that just is better overall, because you don't have to move your hands as much. But yeah, enough of the mundane ergonomic stuff. Let's give you the thing that you clearly came here for, and that is the typing test. This is being recorded on an AT2035. And for reference, because it is always better to have two audio sources when possible, when comparing keyboard sounds, I do not have a better microphone, so here is my garbage internal camera mic. So what do you think? Was this worth all the time, effort, and money it took to build this keyboard and make this video? If you do think it was worth the effort to make this video, do leave a like and subscribe for me to continue putting in time, money, and effort into more keyboard videos. This is very expensive. And tell me in the comments what you would have done differently about this given the choice. I know most people would not have either these keycaps or this keyboard. Were they wasted on each other, or should I have chosen different switches? I'm a tactile guy, so I'm not sure what a linear person would have chose, but I'm not changing them now.